Welcome to Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. Today we are discussing marketing versus sales. Who's got the low-hanging fruits? Written by Fred James. If you are tuning in, chances are you're looking for a shortcut to being really well-informed about the underlying mechanics of business.
Right. It's about pulling back the curtain on how things actually operate day to day.
Exactly. And our mission today is to take a stack of insights from Fred James and use them to decode one of the most universal, just hair-pulling frustrations for anyone operating near the front lines of commerce. We are tackling the endless discussion between marketing and sales.
Which is, it is a dynamic that trips up absolute beginners and seasoned executives alike. You can have the best product in the entire world, but if those two departments are out of sync, the entire engine just stalls out.
Oh, I see this constantly from the marketing perspective. Let me paint a picture for you of how this usually plays out. You're a marketer, right? Working your heart out on a massive campaign. You spend weeks analyzing market trends, you allocate serious ad spend, and finally, you uncover these incredible high-potential leads.
A holy grail of leads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe you're operating in a B2B environment, or maybe it's a B2C consumer campaign. Either way, you nurture these prospects, you qualify them based on all your metrics, and you excitedly pass them over to the sales department. And almost immediately, sales rejects them. They look at your pipeline and declare that the leads are cold, unqualified, or just, a complete waste of time. It is incredibly demoralizing.
I can completely understand the frustration there. But if we examine this from the sales perspective, and I have spent a significant portion of my career managing sales teams, that rejection is rarely born out of malice. Or laziness, for that matter.
It just feels like it sometimes.
Sure. But it really comes down to a fundamental issue of survival and time management. A lead that marketing brings in might look absolutely fantastic for long-term brand building. It might be a highly respected company in the industry that will eventually yield a massive contract.
Right. A huge win for the portfolio.
But if my sales team determines that the lead is going to take 6 months of constant meetings to close, and they have immediate end-of-the-month quotas staring them right in the face, they have a massive problem. They're looking at a terrible return on investment for their immediate time.
Because they need to eat today, basically.
Precisely. Sales needs deals that close this quarter, not just prestige logos for the website a year from now.
Okay, so we are dealing with two departments that are both making entirely honest, logical assessments based on their specific roles. Marketing focuses on the long-term value and brand positioning, while sales is hyper-focused on the short-term time cost and immediate revenue.
That's the core premise Fred James establishes early on. Both sides are being perfectly honest, but just because an assessment is honest does not mean it is correct for the business as a whole.
Right.
You can have two completely honest departments that are inadvertently creating a massive bottleneck. The challenge for you as a listener and a professional is figuring out how to fix that disconnect and get everyone aligned.
And James uses a really specific metaphor to break down this alignment problem. He talks a lot about the concept of low-hanging fruits. Which, in the corporate world, we hear that phrase thrown around in almost every strategy meeting. Oh, constantly. People always say, we need to go after the low-hanging fruit, meaning the easy targets.
Yeah, it's a bit of a buzzword, but Jim expands it into this really structural analogy. The low-hanging fruits are those easy sales targets. Human nature dictates that everyone rushes for them. You don't need a grand strategy to pick an apple that's at eye level, right? You just need sheer brute force and a bit of luck to grab it before your competitor does. But the reality of a mature business is that the low-hanging fruit eventually runs out. The sweetest, highest profit fruits are located way up at the top of the tree.
And a single person just jumping up and down cannot reach those high branches.
No, they can't. To get that high profit fruit, a company needs a coordinated system. Someone has to source the wood and actually build a ladder. Someone else needs to hold that ladder steady on uneven ground. And finally, someone brave enough has to climb up and actually pick the fruit.
That coordination is where companies either thrive or completely fail. And based on how teams approach this specific fruit-picking challenge, James categorizes corporate cultures into 4 distinct organizational types. I think it's a very revealing framework.
It is.
Let's walk through those 4 types, because I think anyone listening will immediately recognize their own workplace in one of them. The first type he identifies is proactive cooperation. This is obviously the ideal scenario. Everyone pitches in automatically without waiting to be told.
You see this most often in energetic, early-stage startups. The team is small, the existential threat of going bankrupt is very high, and the goal is crystal clear. If someone needs a ladder, 3 people are already grabbing wood and nails.
There's no discussion about whose job it is to hold the ladder because everyone's equity is tied to getting that fruit down from the tree.
Exactly. But startups eventually grow. And as they scale, they seem to lose that energy and slide into the second type, which James calls playing it safe. It is essentially a culture of just doing your baseline duty and nothing more.
I've definitely seen this. In playing it safe culture, the boundaries of responsibility become incredibly strict. The person holding the ladder will hold the ladder perfectly, but if a piece of fruit falls right next to them on the ground, they will refuse to bend down and pick it up because harvesting is technically the climber's job.
Right. And during peaceful, stable economic times, this actually feels very organized to middle management. Everyone has a neatly defined box. But when the market shifts or a disruptive competitor enters the space, this kind of rigid boundary setting guarantees failure. Agility is completely lost.
I can see how that rigid structure breeds complacency, but James outlines a third type that sounds even more detrimental. He calls it sweeping your own porch. This goes beyond just strict boundaries into extreme passivity.
I actually managed a team like this earlier in my career, and it is infuriating. Sweeping your own porch is when employees are fully aware of a major opportunity or a glaring problem, but they absolutely refuse to engage with it because it is slightly outside their immediate purview.
Do you have an example?
Oh, absolutely. In my case, we had a massive product launch approaching. The marketing collateral had a glaring, embarrassing typo right on the front page. The sales team noticed it a week before the launch, but because proofreading was not their porch to sweep, they just let it go to print.
You're kidding.
No, they literally pointed at the mistake internally, complained about it, and waited for marketing to notice. They were standing in the orchard, pointing at the high fruit, but refusing to take a single step to go fetch a ladder.
That is a staggering level of dysfunction. They let the entire company look foolish just to prove a point about departmental boundaries.
Which brings us to the absolute bottom of the barrel. The fourth type is passing the buck. This is a culture defined entirely by endless blame games. Nobody is picking fruit, nobody is building ladders, but everyone has a very polished presentation explaining why the failure is someone else's fault.
Oh, the classic post-mortem meeting where everyone brings a slide deck to defend their territory? Marketing says the fruit would have been picked if sales wasn't too lazy to climb the ladder. Sales counters that they would have climbed if marketing had built a ladder that actually functioned. It seems like a passing the buck culture could only survive if a company is heavily subsidized or facing absolutely zero pressure from the real market.
It's a recipe for a slow, agonizing corporate death. Now, the critical question for you listening is how to move a team out of those toxic lower tiers and back up toward proactive cooperation. To do that, we have to look at what actually drives human motivation. Fred James introduces a highly unorthodox case study here to illustrate his point. He analyzes the organizational mechanics of illegal fraud rings.
Wait, fraud rings? Like criminal organizations running scams. How does that possibly fit into a strategic marketing framework? I mean, I understand looking outside the box, but studying a criminal enterprise seems like quite a leap for a corporate strategy discussion.
It sounds bizarre at first glance, I grant you, but strictly from an organizational behavior standpoint, they are a masterclass in alignment. James uses them to demonstrate the raw humor of existential motivation. Let's look at the dry reality of a normal legal corporation. Imagine a new critical IT system crashes on a random Tuesday morning. What is the typical employee reaction?
Well, in most places I've worked, a system crash is treated like a surprise holiday. Employees lean back, take a sip of their coffee, and decide they can't do any real work until the tech department fixes the issue. They still collect their salary for the day, there is zero urgency, and they simply blame the delay on the broken server.
There is no personal consequence to the delay. Now, contrast that dynamic with a highly organized fraud ring. If their communication network or their illicit payment gateway goes down, it is an instant cash flow crisis. It is an existential threat to the entire operation. They do not sit back and wait for a support ticket to clear.
Wow, okay.
The people at the top and the people at the bottom will collaborate instantly. They will invent complex, highly creative workarounds in a single afternoon just to stay operational.
Because their core interest and their survival are perfectly aligned. If the system stays down, nobody gets paid, and the whole structure collapses.
Precisely. James uses this extreme organizational scenario to prove a fundamental truth about human behavior. When survival and core interests are perfectly aligned across a group of people, cross-departmental cooperation doesn't need to be mandated by an executive memo. It happens organically. The marketing equivalent and the sales equivalent within that illicit structure automatically work together because the alternative is immediate failure.
Okay, but bringing this back to a legal standard corporate environment, most employees are not facing a literal existential threat on a daily basis. Unless a company is on the brink of bankruptcy, how do managers create that level of alignment without manufacturing a panic?
That is where James addresses the concept of information bubbles. In a standard company, marketing and sales lack that shared sense of urgency because they're operating in entirely different realities. They don't just have different goals, they speak different languages and consume completely different data.
Let's ground this in a specific industry. If I'm a marketer targeting the B2B tech sector, my dashboard is telling me one story. I might identify a brilliant new tech startup. My predictive data shows that within 5 years, this startup is going to be a massive industry-dominating player. I package this lead, send it to sales, and expect them to share my enthusiasm. But sales looks the exact same startup, sees that they have zero immediate budget for the current fiscal quarter, and completely ignores them.
And who is wrong in that scenario?
Technically,
Neither of them.
right, neither of them. Jane points out that the marketer and the sales rep are living in completely different information bubbles. The definition of success is different. Marketing defines success as capturing future market share. Sales defines success as closing revenue by Friday. To pop these bubbles, Jane offers a very pragmatic solution. Companies need leaders who are fundamentally bilingual in terms of corporate function. You are saying companies need to hire managers who possess dual backgrounds in both marketing and sales. But finding someone who is truly an expert in both fields is incredibly rare. Most professionals specialize early in their careers. Is that a realistic solution?
It is difficult, but it is necessary. If a manager has actual in-the-trenches experience in both disciplines, they can act as a real-time translator between the two departments. They can look at your B2B tech startup and say to the sales team, I know their budget is tight right now and it will hurt your metrics this month. But here is the exact long-term strategic play we are making, and here is how we will structure the contract so it eventually provides a massive boost to your numbers next year. They align the strategies because they understand the pressures of both worlds.
But wait, what about the modern tech stack? We are operating in an era where companies spend millions of dollars on customer relationship management platforms and AI-led scoring software. If sales and marketing are completely integrated on the exact same dashboard, looking at the exact same data points, doesn't the software essentially force them to collaborate and break those bubbles?
It creates the illusion of collaboration, but it does not fix the underlying culture. A dashboard is a piece of glass. It is not a shared mindset. In fact, teams often use software to avoid talking to each other. A marketer will say, I updated the ticket, it's in their queue, and completely wash their hands of the issue. The software becomes a wall instead of a bridge. James introduces a very strict management baseline here that makes a lot of tech-obsessed executives uncomfortable. He argues that a company absolutely must be able to function without its tools.
You're saying if the customer relationship management platform goes offline, the business shouldn't stop. In today's digital landscape, that sounds almost impossible.
It is difficult, but it's the ultimate stress test of a company's culture. If the server crashes, managers must be capable of physically getting up and distributing sales leads verbally. If the email system breaks down, sales needs to get in their cars, drive out, and grab a coffee with the client. Technology is fantastic. Tools are ladders that help you reach the higher fruit much faster. But a broken ladder is never an excuse to simply sit down in the orchard and stop trying to climb the tree. Tools are levers, not crutches.
That makes a lot of sense. We rely so heavily on dashboards that we forget how to actually communicate. And speaking of corporate reliance, I want to ask about KPIs, key performance indicators. There is a pervasive belief in management that if you just assign everyone a metric, teamwork will naturally follow.
That's another common illusion. Giving a department a target metric does not foster collaboration. Fred James uses a brilliant cultural metaphor to explain this fallacy. He compares corporate KPIs to the traditional spring couplet.
For listeners who might not be familiar with the tradition, in Chinese culture during the Lunar New Year, people hang these beautiful red banners or couplets around their doors to attract good fortune. A very popular phrase written on these banners translates roughly to instant money or wealth is arriving.
It is a wonderful tradition, but simply hanging a red banner that says instant money on your front door does not magically deposit funds into your bank account. You still have to go out and do the difficult work. James argues that slapping a KPI on a department is the corporate equivalent of hanging a spring couplet. Telling a sales team to hit a specific quota or telling marketing to generate 50 qualified leads by Tuesday does not create a cooperative environment. It is just a decorative banner hanging in the office.
So if KPIs and expensive software are not the true drivers of teamwork, what actually forces a company into that top tier of proactive cooperation?
Core values, but not the core values printed on a plaque in the lobby. True core values mean that every single person in the company fundamentally believes that their primary job is picking the sweetest fruit in the orchard together. It is a shared mindset that transcends departmental boundaries. When the core value is genuinely shared, the sales team actively wants to help the marketing team refine their targeting because they know better leads benefit the entire operation.
We have discussed this conceptually, but I want to ground this in a massive real-world application. It's one thing to align a scrappy startup with 20 people working in the same room. What happens when you are dealing with a global behemoth? Jane provides a fascinating case study involving the Sony Group.
Sony is the perfect laboratory to examine this problem at scale. To understand the gravity of their challenge, you have to look at the numbers. Sony employs over 112,000 people globally. Those employees are spread out across 1,582 different subsidiaries, handling everything from consumer electronics to highly specialized computer components.
That scale is almost incomprehensible. It's the population of a small city, all expected to pull in the exact same direction.
And at that scale, the silo effect is inevitable and severe. Sony had top-tier engineers in one division, developing absolutely brilliant, cutting-edge technology, but they were completely isolated from the actual market. Meanwhile, in a different building or a different country, frontline B2C marketers had deep, actionable insights into exactly what consumers were demanding. But those marketers had no idea that the engineers in their own company already possessed the tech solutions to meet those consumer demands.
So you have the ultimate disconnect. The people building the ladder cannot talk to the people who know where the fruit is. How does a massive corporation bridge a gap that wide?
In September 2024, Sony launched a highly innovative initiative to solve this exact problem. They created what they called a pollinator network. They officially designated 60 specific employees to act as internal pollinators, literally operating like bees in a vast garden.
What were the actual mechanics of that role? Did they just send out company-wide emails?
Far from it. Their entire full-time job was to act as human bridges. They were given budgets and travel clearance to fly between different departments, sit in on specialized research labs, and visit various subsidiaries. Their mandate was to deliberately cross-pollinate ideas, uncover hidden resources, and connect dormant technology with active market needs.
I have to imagine they faced some serious friction. An engineer deep in a research phase probably doesn't want a meddlesome middle manager from a different department buzzing around their lab asking questions.
There was absolutely friction initially, but the pollinators overcame that resentment by bringing tangible value. They were not there to audit the engineers. They were there to connect the engineer's isolated patent with a marketer who had an immediate client willing to pay for it. And the results of this initiative were staggering. Within just over a year of implementing the network, these 60 Bs successfully matched 300 cross-department projects.
300 entirely new business ventures created in a year simply by connecting dots that already existed within the company.
Exactly. They took an idea from a 2C consumer marketing team, connected it with a 2B technology lab, and launched products that would have otherwise died in isolation. The takeaway for anyone analyzing this case is that collaboration at scale does not happen by accident. Sony's management recognized their severe information bubbles. They realized that assigning KPIs to the engineers and the marketers was not going to fix the silos. They had to intentionally invest capital to pay 60 people to do nothing but engineer proactive cooperation.
That is a phenomenal blueprint. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today dissecting Fred James' insights. We started by exploring the universal friction between marketing and sales, realizing that both sides are making honest assessments based on different survival metrics. We established that to secure the highest hanging, most profitable fruit, a company has to elevate its culture beyond simply playing it safe or passively sweeping its own porch.
We also examined the raw mechanics of motivation. We looked at how extreme organizational structures achieve perfect collaboration organically because their survival instincts and core interests are totally aligned.
From there, we diagnosed the root cause of the corporate disconnect, information bubbles. We discussed the necessity of hiring bilingual leaders who understand the languages of both sales and marketing. We confronted the hard truth that technology and customer relationship management platforms are just ladders. Your business must be robust enough to survive without them. We learned that KPIs are just decorative spring couplets unless true core values are driving the team. And finally, we analyzed how a giant like Sony intentionally invested in a network of pollinators to connect 112,000 isolated employees.
It is a comprehensive, actionable framework for diagnosing and fixing organizational health. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a lingering, provocative thought based on James' analysis of motivation. We established earlier that an immediate existential crisis is the ultimate catalyst for perfect, frictionless teamwork. So if you are a senior manager sitting in a comfortable, highly funded, peaceful company where the teams are stagnant and siloed, should you artificially manufacture a crisis just to force your departments out of their comfort zones and into alignment?
That is a dangerous but incredibly fascinating question to ponder. Do you set the orchard on fire just to force everyone to build a better ladder? I will let you mull that one over. Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.